Coming up on Network Africa, former rebel commander Thomas Kwoyelo gets 40-year jail term in landmark Ugandan war crimes trial. Mozambique's ruling party wins landslide in disputed poll. President-elect calls for peace and dialogue. Plus, a well-known Tunisian lawyer and vocal critic of President Kais Saied sentenced to 2 years in prison for insulting the country. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin in Uganda, where a court has sentenced the former commander in the notorious Lord's Resistance Army LRA to 40 years in prison following a landmark war crimes trial. Thomas Kwoyelo was found guilty of 44 charges, including murder, rape, kidnapping and pillaging, but he denied all charges against him. Kwoyelo is the first commander from the feared rebel group to be convicted by a Ugandan court. Founded in the late 1980s, the LRA is accused of carrying out mass atrocities across Uganda and neighboring countries. Well, let's get more on this story. Joining us now on the program is Halima Atuman, the VOA's reporter in Kampala, Uganda. Hello, Halima. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
Good evening, Naomi. Thank you for having me.
You know, we have discussed the case of Thomas Kwoyelo some time ago while he was awaiting this sentencing. Now, the judgment is here. Does this make any difference to Ugandans?
I beg your pardon, can you just ask that again?
I said, does this make any difference to the Ugandan people, his judgment?
Definitely. Yes, it did. But also, I think for many people, especially the victims, they've received this with mixed reactions. But also, I think we need to appreciate the fact that the court was taken. The court sitting happened right almost at the center of where the atrocities happened, which is in Gulu district. And so for many people, some were excited that the judgment was done. Some thought this is final justice, seeing one of the LRA commanders finally getting a sentence. But there are those who actually don't think that the 40 years is what he should have gotten. Some actually think that Kwoyelo should instead apologize and come out and live alive, come out free, because we are looking at a young man who was conscripted into the LRA at the age of 12. He spends most of his adulthood in the bush fighting for the LRA. And as soon as he's captured, he's back into jail. What kind of life is that? Many will ask. So, yes, it meant a lot for especially the victims.
Now, where is he expected to serve his 40-year sentence?
Beg your pardon? Today.
I was asking where he would be, is expected to serve his jail term.
Okay, he will definitely be serving it in Uganda. He's going to serve it, I think, in a prison in Gulu, and also it starts effective immediately. That is today. We start counting the 40 years for Kwoyelo. So he's definitely going to be held at the same place, the same prison where he's been, been remanded for all the last 15 years. That's where he's going to stay.
We know Kwoyelo was one of the commanders at the LRA. Are there any other probes on the way to bring justice to other men, just like Kwoyelo, that perpetrated atrocities years ago?
Layomi, everyone is now arguing that Kwoyelo was a low-level commander. This is not the cream of the LRA. Shall we ever see the cream of the LRA being tried, before court? We are not sure. The only one that we know is Dominic Ongwen, who was tried in The Hague. But also the other commanders, we're not sure if they're still alive or not. But also the king of all of this, the head, who is Joseph Kony. No one really knows where he is, so we are not sure, because I think in It was this month when the ICC did mention that we are going to file a case in absentia. So the case was supposed to be against Joseph Kony in absentia. However, I do not know what happened. That changed. The next time I got in touch with the ICC team in Uganda, they say that it's been postponed indefinitely. So, but I'm sure that the day that Joseph Kony himself will probably be caught and then tried, if they will, because we do not know how old he is now. He should really be an old man at the moment. So I think it's a dream for many people to see the cream, the top leadership of the LRA being held accountable. But for now, I think people will have to settle with Dominic Ongwen in The Hague and then Thomas Kwoyelo in Uganda.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Halima Atumani, VOA's correspondent in Kampala.
Thank you for having me, Naomi.
The United Nations Special Envoy for the Central African Republic says the country is witnessing a positive momentum from the recent dissolution of active armed groups. Addressing the UN Security Council in New York on the situation in the country, Valentine Rabiza also warned against a risk of backsliding, and to avoid this scenario, she is calling for the Council to provide more resources to the country.
Positive momentum and opportunities stemming from the dialogue between the government and active armed groups, as well as the continuous progress made in the implementation of the political agreement, notably the organization of local elections, the strengthening of border management, and extension of state presence and authority. We've increased local ownership in support of peace and social cohesion. I'm happy to report that the dissolution of the 6 armed groups and 3 factions of armed group signatories to the APPA-RCA remained effective and resulted in the disarmament and demobilization of their combatants, with the integration of some of them in the national armed forces. In this context, the completion of the upcoming 2025-26 electoral cycle is paramount, more so to reinforce institutional stability, and will require MINUSCA multidimensional assistance, which remains essential, coupled with commensurate resources to ensure inclusive, transparent, and peaceful elections.
Mozambique's ruling party, Frelimo, has been confirmed winner of October 9's divisive election, extending its 49-year grip on power in the southern African nation. Daniel Chapo, Frelimo's relatively unknown presidential candidate, will replace Philippe Nyusi, who has served 2 terms. Well, after the results of the disputed polls were announced, the president-elect struck a conciliatory tone, saying he wants to be the president for all Mozambicans and he is calling for peace and dialogue. At the age of 47, Mr. Daniel Chapo, who gained 71% of the vote, will be the first president born after independence in 1975. His closest challenger, Venancio Mondlane, got 20%. Now, following the announcement of the results, there have been violent protests in several towns and a number of people reportedly killed. There's also heavy presence of the police in some areas. The election is said to have been marred by allegations of rigging and the killing of opposition supporters, prompting protests across the country. The International Monetary Fund Africa Department says while the economic outlook for sub-Saharan Africa is gradually improving, implementing reforms is increasingly difficult because of challenges faced. In its latest regional economic outlook for the region, published on Friday, it's saying that high rates of poverty, lack of opportunities and jobs, and weak governance all need to be addressed through policy if development is to be achieved. Deputy Director of the Africa Department, Catherine Patillo, made this known, adding that regional policymakers currently face a difficult balancing act.
Policymakers in the region right now face a difficult balancing act because on the one hand, they need to reduce macro imbalances. That's bringing inflation to target, stabilizing fiscal positions, and maintaining enough external reserves so that if they face shocks, they can deal with it. But on the other hand, they've got these very large development needs, given population growth, and the need to maintain social and political support. This is all against the backdrop of subdued and uneven growth, as well as tight financing conditions and episodes of political and social fragility. First, of course, protecting the vulnerable populations, and there's real scope to improve social safety nets as a good step. Then, in terms of the reforms, working on communication and consultation strategies, and also, of course, making sure that they work on governance and improving public financial management so that they can rebuild public trust that what these reforms are doing is going to benefit people.
32 stowaways were rescued and over 1 ton of cannabis intercepted by Operation Awatse of the Nigerian Navy Western Naval Command in the last 1 year. The outgoing flag officer commanding Western Naval Command, Rear Admiral Mustafa Hassan, said this during the handover ceremony of the command to the new FOC, Rear Admiral Amen. Rear Admiral Hassan also added that the activities of criminal elements and illegal bunkers were also reduced to the barest minimum.
We executed a series of operations aimed at combating piracy, illegal oil bunkering, drug trafficking, and related crimes within our area of responsibility. The efforts led to significant arrest of vessels involved in crude oil theft, including the Vinalaris 1 Lagos, CS Neil 2, and MT Sweet Mary. We also intercepted a cartel of illegal drug smugglers, leading to the seizure of over 1 ton of cannabis sativa, worth approximately 2 billion naira, as well as more than 2,000 bags of foreign parboiled rice that were handed over to the Nigerian Customs Service for necessary action. These achievements have reflected in a marked reduction in sea robbery, piracy, and other maritime crimes. In fact, I can confidently report that there has been no attack in Nigerian waters over the past 12 months. The command has in the last 1 year participated in search and rescue activities, leading to the rescue of over 32 stowaways from different ships and rescue of several persons involved in accidents at sea.
Sonia Damani, a prominent Tunisian lawyer and critic of President Kais Saied, has been sentenced to 2 years in prison on Thursday on charges of insulting her country. Her lawyer says the conviction relates to comments on local radio this year when she called Tunisia a racist country. Her comments followed clashes between migrants and locals. Damani has been in prison since May and was sentenced in September to 8 months in a separate case for saying Tunisia was not a good place to live. In a related development, another court recently sentenced prominent opposition figure Nureddin Biri to 10 years in prison for inciting disobedience. Welcome back to the program. We continue in South Sudan, where women suffer most from conflict and are too often excluded from political and peace processes. However, new efforts are underway to empower all women to fully participate and also meaningfully contribute to peace and security in the world's youngest nation. And this is as key stakeholders gathered for the 4th National Conference on Women, Peace and Security in the capital, Juba.
Women should not only be seen as helpless victims, but leaders in various areas who should be given the space to articulate and amplify their voices. We should be in leadership positions and partner with men to effectively contribute to reconstructing South Sudan now and beyond. This is possible if women inclusion is prioritized at every stage of the peace process, empowerment through capacity building, advocating for girls' education, offering adults education, providing kindergarten services to mothers in workplaces, microfinancing their small businesses to be self-reliant, building alliances for collective action, and creating safe spaces for dialogue, and considering the role of young women and future leaders.
It is my conviction that this conference will inspire each one of us and everyone out there to be active agents of national development as opposite to passive recipients of the development. Participation, protection, prevention, and relief and recovery, which are the key pillars of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325, serve to drive forward the women, peace, and security agenda. Also noting the need for women to climb up the ladder to decision-making.
Welcome to our Africa Tech segment. Recently, Nigeria approved the launch of 4 new satellites into space, and this is expected to boost the country's space technology capabilities. 3 of the satellites will have optical payloads, which means they'll be able to capture images from space, while the 4th will replace an old synthetic reader satellite to help with better imaging and monitoring from space. Well, on Africa Tech today, we will be discussing how important this is and what it really means for Nigeria. And to help us answer these questions and more, we have joining us on the program CEO Space in Africa, Temidayo Onioshu. Thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
We'll break it down for us, the importance of this launch, of the 4 new satellites and their specific purposes.
Yeah, so Nigeria has launched 7 satellites so far, and out of these 7 satellites, only 2 are currently active. And that's Delsat-1 that was launched by the Defense Space Administration in 2022, and NIGECOMSAT-1R that was launched by NIGECOMSAT in 2011. So basically right now we have a National Space Agency that does not have any satellites to manage. So based on the announcement of Director General of the Nigerian Space Agency, it seems the president has approved the acquisition of 4 new satellites for the agency. This includes 3 satellites that would carry optical payloads and 1 that will be equipped with synthetic aperture radar capabilities. The one carrying optical payloads are pretty much replacements for Nigeria Sat-1, Nigeria Sat-2, and Nigeria Sat-X. The last one carrying synthetic aperture radar can be very valuable in providing high-resolution imagery, regardless of weather or even lightning condition. And this makes them very useful in monitoring natural resources, accessing agricultural productivity, monitoring disaster, and all of that. Cloud coverage over the region has been one of the challenging things with previous satellite data from Nigerian satellites. And so the acquisition of a synthetic aperture radar satellite could actually be quite helpful for the government.
But you might agree that, there are challenges bedeviling the space program in the country, and it's been for over the years. How can this really benefit Nigerians, especially in terms of everyday application, monitoring national security?
You see, the problem is that Nigerian space program has largely been a colossal failure and a total waste of taxpayer money. Over the years, the Nigerian government have spent over $1 billion on its national space program across NASA, which is the Nigerian Space Agency, NIGCOMSAT, and Defense Space Administration. And we have almost nothing to actually show for this. And so the fact that Nigerian, through NASA, is acquiring new satellite does not really mean much, especially because the ones they had in the past were practically useless. In fact, while some of NASA's satellites were active, the ground station that was on the premises in Abuja was actually not working for several years, which limits the access to the data and, of course, the usefulness of the satellite. Over the last 10 years, NASA has gotten more than $350 million in annual budget overall in the last 10 years from the Nigerian government. NIGCOMSAT, on the other hand, has gotten about $135 million. Defense Space Administration, which was established around 2016, has gotten about $90 million. And all the 7 satellites that Nigeria has launched so far cost the government close to $600 million. And so while this satellite on paper can actually help Nigeria with a lot of everyday application from national security to weather forecasting to urban planning, land use, agriculture, and all sort of that. The problem is that the agency has actually failed in all of these with previous satellites and government investment. So I don't think we can expect anything significant from this acquisition, at this time. The important question I think we should be asking is that what did Nigeria benefit from previous satellites? And if we did not gain anything from previous satellites, what are the reasons for that? Have we resolved the problem that limited our benefits from previous satellites? If we have not done that, why is the government about to invest new set of money into new satellite acquisition? So I think the problem...
Yeah, let me just, sorry to cut you short, but these are the problems you've mentioned, but how can we get back on track, the solutions to being a force to reckon with in the global space industry?
Our fundamental problem is institutional failure. NASDAQ has failed, NIGCOMSAT has failed. So I think the government of the day should take a look at how they can actually fix this institution before bringing in new investment into the satellite program. This for satellites is going to cost us about $75 million, which the government obviously does not have, and they'll probably have to take a loan for. So before we make new set of mistakes, it's important for the government to, do some sort of assessment on what the current failure look like and how we can solve them. Because the same set of people that caused the current failure, they are still in charge. So, we can't expect anything really significant from them. So this is the problem, and this is how the government can solve it. Fixing the institution.
All right, then. Thank you so much, CEO Space in Africa, Temidayo Onioshun. Thank you for your time on Africa Tech.
Thank you.
And finally, on the program, water in the Sahara Desert. Dramatic drone footage from Morocco shows flooded palm trees and sand dunes across the Sahara Desert on Thursday after a rare rainfall hit the region. The aerial footage shot at Merzouga near Rachidia in southeastern Morocco reveals the extent of flooding triggered by the downpours. Morocco's meteorological agency said the country experienced a particularly unstable and humid month of September, which was marked by intense downpour, while some regions experienced heavy rains exceeding 200 millimeters in 48 hours, resulting in flash floods. A recent report by the UN says over the last few months, heavy rains killed more than 1,400 people in the countries on the fringes of the Sahara. While such extreme events are rare, they may become increasingly frequent due to the effects of climate change. And that's where we end the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde. Have a lovely weekend.